Hello from the Music Interview Corner, today with Mr. Robben Ford. Hi, Robben.
Hi.
So you're making music professionally since, I think, more than 40 years now.
I think so.
And when you learned to play the guitar, you were only 13. What was your first guitar? Can you tell us about your first guitar?
Well, my first guitar was actually purchased for me the night or Christmas Eve. And I think I was 13. I might have been 12 or 13 years old. And my father took me down to the music store. He had the local music store owner. He called him and actually asked if he would be willing to come down and open the music store and let me pick out a guitar.
Oh, that's...
Because he hadn't planned on giving me it, this particular gift that Christmas. But we had spent a day together, and it had focused around music, and he just decided he was going to get me a guitar for Christmas. So I picked out this guitar off the wall in a very small music store. It was, I think, made in Japan. It was a company called Orpheus.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you're doing on YouTube, I have seen it's a Robben Ford guitar dojo.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think dojo is a term from the Japanese martial arts.
Yeah.
Why did you choose dojo as name for it?
Well, because I like to include, the aspect of spirit in what I have to pass on. Music for me has it's basically a spiritual thing. It's very intangible. It's not something that is learned only through books and through scales and practicing. There's more to it than that to make really good music. You might want to dig a little bit deeper. So I thought the martial arts tradition was a pretty good one. For me, the guitar is my samurai sword. It's how I engage in the world. Obviously, I'm not chopping anyone's head off. That's very good, yeah. But it's nonetheless, there's a depth that can be experienced, with music and with your relationship to your instrument that, some might not just connect with right away,
And I've heard when you were 26 years old, you took a break from music and you studied with a Buddhist teacher, with Chogam Trungpa. Oh, sorry, I hope I pronounced it right. And
very well put, very well said, yeah.
And did this change your attitude towards life and towards music?
Well, Buddhism is, kind of a life's work, right? It's kind of a life path. So, changes happen, I think, kind of in a subtle way. Changes happen slowly, basically. For me, I always, what I find in music and what I find in, any kind of spiritual practice they turn out to be kind of the same thing, So I kind of was already attuned in a way. My music was sort of already attuned to this kind of thing, And so I would say, studying Buddhism impacted me in more of a in more than one way, certainly. It affected the music, I'm sure, to some degree. And still does affect the music, but I couldn't put it into words.
Okay. And your father, I think you come from a musician family. That's the other thing that may have impacted you, I think. Like your daddy was a Western singer, I think, and a guitar player, and your mom played the piano and was a singer too.
That's right.
And in which way did this influence you on your own way as artist?
Well, my father showed me my first guitar chords, and also the fact that music was constantly in the house, and that it was encouraged because I knew a lot of kids who were interested in music or would show interest in music, and their parents didn't support it. They didn't encourage it, and my parents were like, great, full speed ahead, And they supported us, in every way that they could. Never for a moment doubting that if that's what we wanted to do, that's what we should do.
So that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah, very positive, environment.
And is this one of the reasons why you like to teach? Because normally, with the dojo you are teaching in a way. And normally, or quite often it is that people start to teach when their career is not going that well. And in your case, we can definitely say that can't be the reason. So what is your motivation to teach?
Well, I originally started teaching, as a way to, broaden my income. I hadn't really thought about it. Yeah, I was approached to do it, I was asked, would you like to write, do a chapter in a book,
Oh, cool.
like a couple, like 3 Robben Ford guitar licks, something like that. So I said sure, and I wrote them out. And I was asked if I'd like to do a clinic at a music store, one day. I was in Utah or something, and the promoter said, the local music store was asking about a clinic. So I said, yeah, I tried it. And so I was being invited to teach, And so I would say yes, and I started to like it, And I started kind of finding my own way in how I would teach, as opposed to doing what I thought I should do to teach. So this whole approach, developed for me that has, kind of a more holistic, approach to music and what it is to be a musician, and not just a guitar player, but to be a musician, and to have a musical attitude, So it's become a pleasure to me, to be able to teach.
Yeah, I think we can see that on the video.
Good.
And I also saw a video where you presented a special guitar. I think it was a Gibson B25. Oh, yeah. So do you prefer Gibson guitars, and why?
No, I don't. I have a variety of instruments, and I buy an instrument because it will serve a certain purpose for me. Okay. My Telecaster. I have a 1960 Telecaster. I was not looking for a Telecaster when I found this instrument.
It came to you in a way.
Well, I stumbled across it in a music store, and I just picked it up. I had to play it, and I couldn't leave it behind. So I bought this guitar, and it became, an instrument that I play, a good 50% of the time.
Okay.
And it's kind of my blues guitar. Like when I really, want to just play some blues, this is the instrument that I pick up and play. And if I want to play something kind of loud and fast,
yeah.
I'll go toward the Gibson,
Okay, that's for the hardest things.
Yeah. But on my new record, the record is called Bringing It Back Home.
Okay.
And on this new record, I'm playing an Epiphone, a 1963 Epiphone Riviera, which is like, it's got mini humbucking pickups on it, and it's it has its own sound, which is serving me very well right now. I did the entire record on this one guitar, and I always use 2-3 guitars at least on any record I do.
Okay. It's always the same 3 guitars, or does it differ?
Kind of, but they change, like the Gibson type guitars. I've had a custom instrument that I played for about 4 years that was made for me by a Japanese guitar luthier.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, named Taku Sakashita. And but I really have moved towards vintage instruments. I like the old sound. I like the old instruments. I like the way they feel. I like the way they sound. So I started playing a late 50s Les Paul, and now I have a 68 Les Paul that I play quite a lot. The Telecaster, and then this Epiphone I use on the entire new record. And again, it serves a special purpose. It does a particular thing that I like. and only this instrument really does that thing, you know. So that's why, you know,
You're very practical.
practical, but also inspired by, you know, like this instrument brings something out of me. So it's not exactly practical, but functional.
Yeah, but I can also see this spiritual aspect.
Well, I mean, it's all kind of one thing, right? The musician, the instrument, the music, it all blends together, you know.
And where do you get these vintage instruments?
Anywhere, you know. In the United States, I've never bought one out of the United States.
Okay.
They would be a lot more expensive outside of the United States, and they're already expensive in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've found them in different places, you know, different music stores, and you know, in every case, I think I've kind of stumbled upon the instrument. I was not looking for it, you know.
Yeah, it came to you in a way.
Kind of. I don't know if I can really say that, but you know, certainly, you know, the first really good Les Paul I ever bought, I wasn't looking for a Les Paul. The Telecaster was not looking for a Telecaster, you know.
Maybe it's kind of destiny, guitar destiny. Or
something like that, you know.
And during your career, you were supporting or playing with a lot of musicians, like, for example, Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Miles Davis. How was it for you to play with them and also to be asked to play with them?
Well, you know, in each case, it was a very different experience. When I was invited to play with Joni Mitchell, which was the first real star, you know, that I ever worked with, I actually declined at first. I said no, because for one thing, I wasn't that familiar with her music, you know. I was into blues and jazz, you know. So Joni Mitchell, I knew nothing of what she was doing. But I had second thoughts, and the person who had called me was Tom Scott, and the band backing Joan was called the LA Express. And he said, well, you know, why don't you just let me bring over Joni's new album, and I'll bring over the LA Express's new record, and you can listen to it and see if you resonate with it. So I said, well, that's probably a good idea, you know. Okay. And so he brought the records over, and the record was Court and Spark, and that record is just a brilliant work, you know. And I continually warmed to the music, and I particularly liked the drummer. The drummer kept catching my ear, and it was John Guerin, who was a great, you know, musician. And the LA Express's music, which, you know, I also listened to some of that, I didn't really care for. I thought it was kind of commercial jazz, you know. And I was a purist about, you know, I was listening to John Coltrane, and, you know. But I got together and I played with them, and the band was, you know, a bunch of great musicians. And I'd never worked with people on that level, you know. The only people I'd worked with, you know, had been my friends. So just the opportunity to be around these great musicians, you know, that I could learn from, you know, was kind of irresistible. And Joni was just wonderful, you know. Her music was so beautiful. She was so great. So I learned a lot during that period. So that was a very particular, odd situation, you know, that occurred. And the thing with George Harrison came about because of Tom Scott, actually, once again. Tom was going to do the George Harrison tour. He had worked with George and Ravi Shankar. And George heard me play, and he invited me to do his tour along with Tom. So...
But that must be really cool when you, at your early point of your career, got such invitations and such offerings, and people want to work with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, incredible opportunities. You know, I was 22. I was 22 years old, and you know, it thrust me into a world that, quite frankly, was kind of overwhelming for me, because I'm a small-town kid who was suddenly, you know, hanging around these, you know, these far more sophisticated people, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of overwhelming. It was a little terrifying, quite honestly.
Oh yeah, I can understand.
I was kind of not ready for it.
But you did really well.
Well, yes, I got through it, and I made some records, and I made some noise, and now people kind of knew something about me. I got some notoriety out of those things. They were very high visibility. So it was sort of like the beginning of, a lot of things.
Is it different for you? I mean, you played as solo artist, you toured with other artists, and you played as part of a band, like, for example, the Blue Line. Is it a big difference to do this band thing or to play solo?
Well, even with the Blue Line, I was basically leading that band, and I've been doing the solo thing my whole life, really. I've done the other things as well, played with other people, but they were for, fairly condensed periods of time, The George Harrison tour was, that whole thing was about 2.5 months. And with Joni Mitchell, I worked with her for about 9 months. And then a year and a half later, we did another tour for about 3 months. But in between, I was always, myself. So I've really been doing that all my life, and it's a role that I don't necessarily cherish. I do like playing with other people. I do like sharing the music, But generally, I wind up wanting to play my own music, I don't necessarily want to be the band leader, but I want to play, music that I resonate with. And a lot of other situations, I don't necessarily want to play that music.
So it just happened again.
Everything kind of just happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, in some way, yeah. And in my last question, I like to come back to your new solo album, Bringing It Back Home. Yeah, what is your favorite track? Do you have a favorite track on Bringing Back Home, and why?
I kind of do. There's a song, it's the only original that I wrote on the record. It's called Oh Virginia. It's kind of a ballad. And I really like this song a lot. There are things that I like as well, but for different reasons, So,
right. This is most personal for you.
Yeah, because I wrote it, and it's always a good feeling to write a song and feel like you really wrote a good song. Actually wrote a good song. I'm not Paul Simon, So for me, writing songs has been, kind of a practice. I feel like I'm getting better at writing songs. One day I might even write a great song. That kind of feeling, I feel like a practitioner of the art, So
I think a lot of people think what you did already is quite great.
Well,
so.
Thank you. I like some of my work, but
that's a good statement.
Yeah, I'm not like a downer on myself. But this song, Oh Virginia, I really like it. I just really like it. It's got a unique quality to it. And yet it sounds familiar at the same time, That to me is a good song. It's almost like you've heard it before, but you haven't,
Cool. I will keep that in mind when I'm listening to it again. So, Robben, thank you so much for this interview.
My pleasure.
And goodbye from the Music Interview Corner.
See you.